All right, Dean. So I got your video queued up with Mike Trout. Kind of like we talked about this week. We'll kind of go under your swing here, and kind of compare the two, and we'll kind of go from there. But I just kind of want to play these both side by side, so you can kind of just see it at least for yourself, and then we'll kind of break down. So give you just 1 second to take a look at them. Okay, so let's take a look real quick at Mike Trout. Right. So obviously couple things that I do want to work on going forward. I think we talked about this in lessons. The first thing, right, with our head. Now, the one thing I do want to kind of, work on it, and I'm just pointing this out, because I'm just seeing this. I feel like we talked about this, but I just want to make sure. Whenever we work on T work, the number one thing I want you to do is always face towards, I got Matt here in the background, but I want you to always, face towards the pitcher because whenever we train, the whole point, and I know we discussed this at some point in the lesson, the whole point of training is to resemble game-like scenarios as much as possible. So likewise, we're always going to be getting the baseball here from the pitcher, right? Same thing, vice versa. What we're going to see in this video here with Mike Trout too. So we want to allow ourselves to, replicate that because at the end of the day, we're going to be getting the pitch from the same location. So we might as well get our eyes kind of in that location where it's going to come from. So just one thing I noticed here just a second ago that I kind of wanted to go over. I know that this is from also the beginning of the lesson, so I know we talked about it, but I also just wanted to point it out again. So let's kind of just get into real quick, Mike Trout's swing versus your swing. So let's talk first to the hands, right? One of the most important parts of hitting is obviously the load, right? We want to get to the point where we get into this load. So take a look at Mike Trout's hands, right? And this is something we'll work on a little bit next week as well. Notice how he's what's the word I kind of want to use for this? He's not tense, but he's firm. That's the right word. He's firm with his posture, right? So if we were to take a look at his hand at his posture real quick, right? So he's got this lead hand right here, and then he's got the same thing going on with his backhand, almost like that, right? So he's in a good, powerful load right here, right? Notice when we get into yours, right? We have a good, powerful front arm, right? But then we kind of look at the back arm, and it's a little bit weak, right? So what I really want to work on here is getting next week a little bit better of a backhand, right? More so, our back arm should kind of look like this whenever we're swinging, right? Or getting into this low position. Same thing, kind of like how we're going to see with Mike Trout. He's in this position as well. So that's one thing I want to talk about with you next week. Additionally, right, let's talk about Mike Trout's load here. Notice, right, notice his load here. If I were to draw a line kind of in his midsection right here, same thing with yours, right? He gets into this point and he's not necessarily kind of moving that much. If I were to draw a line down Mike Trout's middle of his body, right, he's not really deviating from that line, right? He's keeping his weight shifted in the middle of his body versus if I were to draw a line right now in the center of your body, right, we're going past that line a lot, right? And this is what we talked about at the beginning of the lesson. And you did a great job at the end of the lesson, really getting into kind of this idea. But if I were to draw a line right here, right, you're passing this line in the very back, right? You're going almost, I'm just going to draw two lines here, two lines back to go one line forward, right? So what we want to do instead is kind of like how Mike Trout has this 45-degree angle. You'll hear me talk about this a lot. As you heard in my lesson, that we talked about this 45-degree angle, right? We want to keep this 45-degree angle right here as long as possible. That's going to be where we kind of load, right? So watch how Mike Trout's back leg loads, right? So he gets in this 45-degree angle, and as soon as he picks up this leg, he's immediately having to go forward because that's the only way his body can go, right? Versus right here, if you wanted to, you could stand like this all day long. Just because you can't really go anywhere from this, right? Versus if we're in this 45-degree angle, The only way that we can go, if I clear all this and put this back once again, the only way we can go is forward, right? So I want to keep working on that. I know you did a great job at the end of the lesson with that, but I want you to keep going with that. Likewise, let's kind of start to get into more so his swing, right? His swing path. Notice, right, if I were to put a line right under his elbow and your elbow, right, watch what Mike Trout's elbow does, right? It doesn't really deviate until he's going down for the baseball, right? Where he's starting to make his drive to go to the baseball versus yours, right? You dip down a little bit right there before you're starting to go towards the baseball, right? So Trout is getting into this load and you're almost using yours as your load, right? You're going down to get loaded up versus we should keep our hands right up here into load and right there is where you should start taking your drop. You kind of start dropping before you really start going to the baseball. Like right here, that is where you should start bringing your hands down towards the baseball, right? Instead of kind of like here, you start dipping, right? The one thing we don't want to do is we don't want to dip because that's going to take us to go down and then come back around, right? Versus Trout, if we were to look at his swing, he goes like this almost with his swing. If I were to kind of look at it, so he goes down and he comes with a lift, right? Goes down and comes up versus yours is it's down and then you're having to readjust, right? And I also just want to show the bat paths here, right? Or more so the contact points. And I know we kind of talked about Mike Trout's is more so like this and yours at first was kind of like that, right? To the point that Trout's working with a lot more surface area for his bat, but still having enough rise so that he can lift that baseball versus, if I were to, let's just say, for example, build a box right here, right? I don't have much surface area for a baseball, right? If it's just vertical like this versus if we're coming in like this, we have a lot more surface area to work from baseball. We got over here, we got over here. We got a lot of surface area to kind of work in order to hit that baseball, right? Versus if we're more so like this, right? We only have a certain amount of area that we can really work with, right? Now, I know that's not necessarily the greatest depiction because you're probably like, well, Max, those look very similar. You're just flipping them a little bit. And I think you know what I'm kind of talking about in terms of the width. I know we talked about it a little bit. I know this isn't necessarily the greatest view to kind of show it on. We could go back over it in practice. I know that it's a little bit harder. I wish I had a front view so I can kind of show you the difference that, that Trout's getting on a better plane versus when you originally started, your plane didn't have much area in order to hit that baseball, right? So then we get to this load area, right? So notice Trout's front leg, right? It's straight, right? Versus yours has a little bit of bend to it, right? We want to create as much tension as possible. I do like this back leg a lot. I really do like this back leg, but I would like this leg right here to be straight like that, right? Additionally, I think that we can kind of make your torso a lot more compact with your swing, right? Notice how his swing is a lot more compact, right? He's keeping, his back arm right here connected with his body, right? Versus, right, yours has a little bit more spacing. You do a good job right there after connection, right? Versus the whole way down, we should be connected with our body, kind of like how Mike Trout's doing right now, right? This front arm, I actually really like kind of how that front arm is. I think we could kind of straighten it a little bit more. But obviously, we'll kind of work on that and we'll keep working on it. And I know you did a really great job towards the end of it, staying connected, because I know we talked about those two things in our lesson. But I'm just kind of showing you where we're starting from, where we started from, and kind of what we're trying to get to, right? So additionally, what we talked about is this foot right here, right? So notice whenever we get to this point, right, we want to get to where, we're leveled off, right? And you actually do a really great job on this one. If I were to draw let me draw actually a better line. If I were to draw a line right here, right, between you and then also Mike Trout, y'all are both in a really great line. And I know a little bit, we kind of got to the point where, we were stepping out a little bit. So we kind of closed ourselves off just a little bit to just kind of see if that would work. And I know also, we got to the point where we were a lot more like this, right? And you felt you were a lot more athletic. And that's kind of where we got into the John Carlos Stanton stance and, kind of working with that and kind of see what we could work with. But that's kind of what I got for you this week. Obviously, I'm looking forward to, to continue to work with you. I know we got a lot of work to do. Obviously, you have a lot of expectations for yourself, and, we both want to meet those expectations and, get ourselves to the point that, number one, we're consistent with our swing, but number two, we have that power in our swing because, like we both talked about, you're a very powerful kid. You play football, you're a power lifter. You have the athletic ability to really do some damage to a baseball, but it's more so trying to get yourself into the ability to make great connection every single time, and that's obviously going to come with time. But that's kind of my breakdown this week. We'll kind of work on it next week. Obviously, if you have any questions, I know we talked about the end of the lesson. Shoot me a text and kind of ask me and figure out the why to things. And obviously, if you have any questions about this, we'll go over at the beginning of next lesson, and we'll kind of break down exactly, if you want to kind of know the why of why we do a lot of these things and why I'm talking about some of these things. We could definitely go into that, but let me know if you have any questions, and I'll see you next lesson.